That's good to know that you feel fine. I'm so glad to hear that. I was worried for a moment there. Before I get... Oh, my name is Marz Theron, by the way, in case you're wondering who this new voice is on your radio. This is Conspiracy Comedy News on American Freedom Radio. That's CCN on AFR. Well, before I start tearing Donnie a new one for actually getting up and talking and embarrassing our nation and his office at the UN yesterday, let's see what else is going on. Something else, for God's sakes, anything. Oh, Anthony's wiener is back in the news. Yay! Alrighty then. There's some distraction. Let's see, U.S. prosecutors were talking about today that they want a prison sentence for the former U.S. Congressman, Anthony, and his wiener, who was found guilty in a federal court for sending obscene messages to a minor. The federal prosecutors said on Wednesday, which is today, that Wiener should go to prison for 2 years for engaging in sexting with a 15-year-old girl. The prosecutor said in filing in Manhattan federal court, Wiener, a grown-ass man, a father and a former lawmaker, willfully and knowingly asked a 15-year-old girl to display her body and engage in sexually explicit conduct for him online. Such conduct warrants a meaningful sentence of incarceration. Well, okay. And Wiener had already given his rebuttal back last May when he pled guilty in court. He says, I have a sickness, but I do not have an excuse. Want to see my dick? He's a cut-up. The man is a cut-up. What else is going on? Putin has decided to order an end to the U.S. dollar trade. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, no. At the Russian seaports, he wants to stop using the dollar and start using the ruble. And right away, when our leaders heard about that, they sent in the bombers. Uh-oh, watch out. You know what happened to the guys over there in Syria and in Iraq and anybody else who's removed themselves from the petrodollar? There's a good chance they're going to switch to the ruble, the petro-ruble, I guess they're going to call that. Hillary, she's put out a new book. Have you seen her new book? Anybody read the book? Wave your hand if you've read it. It's called What Happened? And I don't know why she didn't put a question mark on the end of that, because it should be called What Happened? What happened? It's a flop at the bookstores, as well it should be. Rehashing of all the old stuff. Russia did it. It was the Russians. And every other excuse she's got that we've all seen on memes all over the place. Here's another thing that showed up today. It's kind of about Trump. The top Democrats, was exactly about him. Top Democrats in the United States Senate are demanding the administration of President Donald Trump. They want him to provide evidence for his claims that Iran violated the international nuclear deal. Apparently he opened his mouth yesterday at the UN and said that they weren't holding up their end of the bargain. Today, 7 senior Democratic senators wrote a letter to Trump's cabinet officials, including the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, Rex the Dog Man, Tillerson, and Defense Secretary James Mad Dog Mattis, asking them to provide any information they have to prove that Tehran has not been committed to the 2015 agreement, dubbed as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Since Trump took office, the U.S. has launched an attack against the nuclear deal negotiated between Iran and the world powers, including Washington, threatening to abandon the deal on multiple occasions. That's what he's been saying. He told the United Nations General Assembly yesterday that the nuclear agreement is an embarrassment for Washington and accused Tehran of violating the deal. The other signatories to the deal, though, UK, Russia, Germany, China, and France, have reiterated their commitment to the deal. And people are out there protesting out in front of the White House. They said, we love this deal. Y'all need to honor it. It's been fine. Here's the thing, is like Trump's saying that they violated the deal? No. The only one violating that deal is the United States. We were supposed to release funds that we've been holding back from them as part of the deal. They had sanctions on them and that's why Iran agreed to it in the first place. The sanctions were already there. So Iran has upheld their part of the deal for over 2 years now, and they're supposed to be getting their money back. But Trump's acting like we're supposed to be like, Trump and a lot of the media. I don't think even Obama was saying we're not going to give them money. It's not giving them money. It's their money that we've been holding from them. Sheesh. The IAEA, that's the International Atomic Energy Agency, they verified repeatedly Iran's compliance on multiple occasions. In their letter, the American Democrats argued that under the 2015 Iran Nuclear Review Act, the president must notify the U.S. Congress of any violations it has detected within 10 calendar days of receiving the information. That's what the letter they sent them. They sent it to Trump and said, hey, to date, the Senate has received no such notification, and the administration has provided little public testimony to Congress on the status of Iranian compliance with the agreement. Well, that's interesting, because in actuality, twice now since Trump's been in office, I was assuming that they did as they were supposed to do. He, maybe not him, but one of his people, had to report to Congress that Iran is in compliance. It's like every 3 months. So, let's see. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. We need to buy him a vowel between an M and N. It's a stupid name. He's and Energy Secretary Rick Perry and the Director of National Intelligence Dan Coates were among other recipients of the letter. Send Rick Perry a letter. I know Perry. He's a doofus. We don't like him. He's one of them lies, too. He's a definite lie. It was signed by Senators Sherrod Brown, Maria Cantwell, Ben Cardin, Richard Durbin, Patrick Leahy. Patrick Leahy? He's still alive? Sheesh, he's been around since 9/11. He was one of them people that got that scary anthrax letters. See, Jack Reed and Mark Warner, they all signed that. The Trump administration has until mid-October to certify to Congress whether Iran is complying with the JCPOA. The lawmakers have demanded the recipients to provide any information they claim they have before October 6th. And Iranian President Hassan Rouhani, he's mad about this. He thinks that negotiation with the United States would be a waste of time. And he's definitely with this administration. He said yesterday that if the international accords were supposed to be violated because an individual doesn't like them, no one would seek to find a solution to global issues through diplomacy, and this will amount to inviting the world to chaos, muscle flexing, and military power. There's still some idiots out there that think Iran has nuclear weapons, and they don't. And they haven't tried to make nuclear weapons in a long time. They gave up any of their nuclear ambitions, shut down anything they had in the way of high quality centrifuges, because it ain't easy to purify uranium or any other radioactive isotope to a point where it's weapons ready. You got to be like 5% or so. It's got to be very, very fine nuclear fusion. Right now, the highest they're going is like 20%, and that's for medical isotopes. Like for when you irradiate a cancer or something like that. So yeah, things are not cooling down in the world with Trump at the helm of the United States military invasion force. It's just not. We put a crazy man in charge. The Defense Department, they should be renamed the Offense Department, because all we do is attack one country after another. I'm telling you. And he inherited that, but I was hoping, a lot of us were hoping against hope, because we knew that Hillary was going to be evil. We knew we didn't want that woman holding the reins to the American military horse. Oh, no. But this guy has come in, and as he telling the truth and smoothing things over, everybody has such high hopes for him. When I was watching this video, I saw it on YouTube. And I was looking down at the comments. It's like this. There were so many people that were so appreciative of what Trump said. They thought he was so wonderful. Oh, he's so wonderful. Sheesh. Well, Israel controls our government. And he's basically, I think he's got his speech was written by Netanyahu's speechwriters. Anyway, so yesterday he addressed the United Nations General Assembly in New York. You'll keep in mind that he has repeatedly referred to the UN as just a club for people to get together and talk and have a good time. That's what he said about it. He doesn't respect the UN anyway. You know, for him to speak as he did, though, to a good time club, as he calls it, he came across as like the anti-comic. You know, he was not a good speaker. He was not a good opening act, if you will, for the rest of the people. He didn't do any of his usual stuff. You know, he didn't, how's everybody doing tonight? Who's from out of town? You know, if he'd have done that, that would have been hilarious. Come on. Because the UN and everybody's from out of town. You know what I'm saying? Come on. Use the good material. It writes itself. But, you know, it's more, he was doing like, Iran bad, Israel good, North Korea bad, South Arabia good, Syria bad, a wall is good. That's my time. Be sure to tip your wait staff. He did that kind of a monologue. It was boring. He was up there and he kept saying sovereign and sovereignty. He said it like 18 times. And yet it appears he doesn't even know what the definition of sovereignty is. You can't say that about countries that we are invading to take down their sovereign governments. Trump, get your act together. His bits on North Korea, Iran, Venezuela, they're anything but supportive of sovereignty, is what I'm trying to say here. He called North Korea a depraved regime. And he said that the U.S. would have no choice but to destroy North Korea. Well, you know, I know. I mean, it's like, there's an awful lot of nuclear powers that are, you know, testing their nuclear devices and testing their missiles. Why should North Korea be different? They haven't invaded anybody. You know, he was saying that if they don't comply with his demands to cease with testing its missiles and developing its nuclear arsenal, that he had no choice but to destroy them. For all I know, he's destroying them right now. And he did add that attacking a U.S. territory or ally would be a no-no as well. I don't know, maybe he was implying that would be a requirement for attacking them. I don't know. But I don't think... Kim Jong-un's crazy, of course he is. But he's not stupid, I don't think. He's not going to, you know, do anything nutty like shoot something. He threatened to. He's just trying to get a rise out of Trump, you know. I think he likes kicking the hornet's nest that Donnie's wrapped himself in. He said, I'm crazy, I want to see you be crazy. It's like arguing with a troll on Facebook, dealing with Trump. The man needs to get his... The man needs to be like cut off on his Twitter privileges, all I got to say. Who's in charge of that at the White House? These are the things I want to know. Anyway, his speech wasn't really clear about that or anything else, really. But he did tell the standard lies. You know, about Kim Jong-un. He said, Rocket Man is on a suicide mission. Okay, that's a good one, okay? That's a good line. Little Kim probably likes being called Rocket Man. I mean, come on now. It's like a compliment. That's it, yeah. So, all right. You know, now you're playing. I like it. You know, you have a little fun with this. But the thing is, North Korea has not attacked anybody at all. Unlike us, we've attacked damn near everybody on the planet, every country. You know, at least 70 or 80 of them, and most of them multiple times. And never mind that China is North Korea's ally. Hello. Hello. Never mind that most likely China is secretly getting Kim Jong-un to test their rockets and nuclear weapons to hide them from the gang over the Non-Proliferation Treaty Clubhouse. You know, take the heat off of China. It says, here, Kim, try this out. See what this one does. That's probably what it is. I mean, who else is giving him that kind of technology? It started off with him having a bunch of ancient antique crap, and then he started testing stuff that was like gradually getting better and better. You know, by the way, China stole that technology from us, so they're letting China. That would be the most obvious thing, I think, and so do others, that Kim's testing China's technology for them. But it's nothing. It's like it's decades behind where we are now. They got like the '60s era H-bomb. This thing's too big, you know, to put on a missile. It's kind of obvious that the earlier nuclear devices that he triggered, that those were the triggers, if you will, for the explosion for a hydrogen bomb. A hydrogen bomb is a two-part bomb. You gotta have a nuclear detonation that is then sets off the hydrogen part of it. So you got this stupid, I don't know, a figure eight kind of shape, you know, of a bomb. So they've managed to successfully test an H-bomb, but they still got a long way to go before they can make one small enough to fit on a rocket. That's like it's like an early stage of their development. So what is Trump worried about? Oh, he's not, is the answer to that. But I'll get into more about that in a minute. I've already talked about how valuable North Korea is in previous shows, that they have upwards of $10 trillion worth of things to be stolen. You know, their resources. They have lots of jewelry laying around on the ground that they can come and get. They got all kind of everything. You know, coal, oil, everything, iron, copper. They got it all. I'm telling you, they got it all. And Trump and his cronies really want put their mitts on it. Well, still, anyway, the U.S. influence on the United Nations has brought a new round of sanctions against the North Korean country, which would make life a lot harder on these already impoverished citizens over there. And they will affect China as well, because those two kids are kind of like, you know, they're in business together. So Donald, either he doesn't care about stuff like that, or he's simply oblivious to this huge boat that he's rocking. You don't want to mess with China's money. I mean, they got our Walmarts. You don't want to pull our Walmarts? Yes, please pull our Walmarts, you bastards. You know, sanctions, this sanction crap, that's terrible punishment to the civilians in North Korea. They're already impoverished. It's like you look at photographs of North Korea from space at night, and it's like everything around them, the lights are on. And there's North Korea ain't got no lights. I'm telling you, it's pretty sad. We sanctioned Iraq based on lies, weapons of mass destruction, and the position that we placed Saddam Hussein in. You know, he was our guy. We put him in there. So, you know, he started acting like he actually was the ruler, and he started selling his oil in Eurodollars. So, you know, next thing you know, we got this 10 years of sanctions on Iraq, and we starved 1 million Iraqis to death, mostly women and children. We did that. I know maybe Saddam Hussein could have been nicer in spreading what little bit was left over, you know, but it's rough. This is not a good game that we're playing, that our country is playing. And anyway, so Trump told these same old lies about Iran. They sounded particularly ridiculous because he obviously thinks that he's talking to people at the UN that get their view of the world from the liars in our mainstream media. You know, people in our countries are almost forgivable because that's what, you know, both sides, left side and right side of the mainstream media, it's all controlled by the CIA, and it's the same lies. But over there, they have access to media that isn't controlled by the Rothschilds and the CIA, if they know where to look. So, yeah, Trump actually called Iran a reckless regime. They're a reckless regime. He claims they speak openly of mass murder, vowing death to America, destruction to Israel, and ruin for many leaders and nations in this room. Really, has Iran really been threatening everybody in that room? Anybody in that room? You know, those are just lies. Sure, in the past, they've had protesters out there protesting, chanting death to America, but maybe, just maybe, we fucked with their country a bit too much. I said the F word, I'm very sorry. You know, and they don't like Israel either because they know the two are joined at the hip. Because they know that both of these nations have attacked their own nations on multiple occasions. But what other nations is he talking about? Israel has bombed nuclear reactors in Iran not that long ago. He said, let's see, the Iranian government masks a corrupt dictatorship behind the false guise of a democracy. Well, look who's talking, Trump. Huh? You think you were America's choice, or Hillary? You know, we got this false guise of democracy going on. Our elections are rigged as hell. Ron Paul was the person that was chosen the last 2 election cycles as the people's choice at the debates. And they yicked him out. He didn't even make it to the elections. Bernie Sanders, the choice on the Democratic side of the aisle. They were robbed by our false guise of democracy that you say they have. Before they even got to the election, they were robbed. The American people were robbed because we wanted those guys, you know. Not me, I didn't want Bernie, but I definitely wanted Ron Paul. He said he's turned a wealthy country from a rich history, with a rich history and culture, into an economically depleted rogue state whose chief exports are violence, bloodshed, and chaos. You know, it's like more alarmist crap like that. If any country fits that description, it's the United States and Israel and England. We're the ones who are going around exporting violence, bloodshed, and chaos into the countries around the Middle East. America led the attack on the Middle East these past 16 years after the false flag of 9/11. He doesn't know that? And he went on to mumble things like, let's see what he said. The longest suffering victims of Iran's leaders are in fact its own people. Rather than use its resources to improve Iranian lives, its oil profits go to fund Hezbollah and other terrorists that kill innocent Muslims and attack their peaceful Arab and Israeli neighbors. And there you go. Now he's actually trying to turn Iran's own people against their leadership. He spoke that way a few times more, where he was trying to say that, you know, that the Iranians need to rise up and take their country back. You know, Hezbollah was created to fight back against the peaceful, as he called them, the peaceful Israelis that invaded Lebanon and the Golan Heights, and their peaceful Arab mercenary armies that are armed and funded by Israel, the CIA, MI6. I got news, Donnie. The Iranians aren't as stupid as your base. No, they're not. You got a base of people that hang on your every word, but the Iranians know a little something. They've been around for a while. They've seen what the Americans have done to their country in the past. So anyway, Donnie McDonstein continued trying to calm the Iranians by saying, this wealth which rightly belongs to Iran's people also goes to shore up Bashar al-Assad's dictatorship, fuel Yemen's civil war, and undermine peace throughout the entire Middle East. Now, that's a hell of a sentence. He actually managed to cram 4 separate enormous lies into one sentence there. Did you notice that? The first part of it. This wealth which rightly belongs to Iran's people. Oh, does it really? Does it? Huh? Well, does that mean that the wealth of the oil pulled out of the ground in America belongs to Americans? Where's my check? Huh? Exxon? Mobil? Texaco? Shell? Hello? Where the hell are my checks? You know, he's talking out of his ass. That's bullshit, number one. Number 2 of that sentence is where he said, it goes to shore up Bashar al-Assad's dictatorship. Asshole. Bashar al-Assad is the elected leader of Syria. He was elected by a far higher majority than any of our presidents have been in a very long time. He has a very high approval rating, as opposed to say, oh, I don't know, you pompous asshole. I know that Trump's listening to me. He's a big fan of the show. Lie number 3 in that sentence was, the wealth of Iran's oil sales goes to fuel Yemen's civil war. He actually said that. Oh, dumbass! Yemen is not in a civil war, and neither is Syria. Yemenis are being slaughtered daily by the Saudis. The Saudi Arabia and Yemen are not the same country. It's not like North Korea, South Korea back in the 50s. Oh, no. This is not a civil war. Saudi Arabia is a sovereign nation, and Yemen is a sovereign nation, and the Saudis are mass murdering the Yemenis. And the oil sales funding the mass murder of Yemenis doesn't come from Iran. It comes from the sale of Arabian oil. Those are the people that are selling their oil so that they can buy, military grade, high-tech military grade equipment. I'm telling you, they got the best stuff over there, and they're mass murdering the Yemenis with it. The British weapons manufacturers have earned more than £6 billion from their deals with Saudi Arabia ever since the beginning of the kingdom's ruthless war. $600 million, or 600 million pounds, that is. It's probably more like $700 million, 800. I haven't got my chart in front of me. What? Oh, Martha, what's the pound at today? She's ignoring me. Let's see, in sheer profits from the deadly war, which has killed over 12,000 Yemenis since its beginning more than 2.5 years ago. British Trade Secretary Liam Fox said all of his country's arms deals were ethical because they prevent an interruption of unregulated sales. That is what they say. They lie to their own people, just like our people lie to us. That's the British Trade Secretary saying, oh, our arms deals are ethical, because otherwise they'd be buying guns from unregulated people. He actually said that those of us from advanced economies must remember that if we do not provide countries with means of defending themselves, I don't think that's defending yourself. Nobody's attacked the Arabian Peninsula in a very long time. He said, if we do not provide countries with means of defending themselves, he should be saying offending others, with means of defending themselves, then we will see a proliferation of uncontrolled and unregulated arms sales free from oversight or inhibitions. Who's going to fill in the gap if you guys aren't doing it, huh? America? Yeah. Israel? Yeah. Come on now. You're saying that your competition is unregulated? Liar! The man's a liar! Hey, the Saudis aren't defending themselves any more than the United States is defending themselves and bombing civilians daily in Syria, so knock it off. Those bastards started those wars. Nobody attacked either of them, and I'm talking about United States and Britannia, even Israel. They're not being attacked. I mean, you know, certainly the Palestinians attempt to fight back once in a while. But you can't say that any of those countries are being attacked. They're not defending themselves. The Saudi war has also triggered a daily cholera epidemic across Yemen, which has killed 2,048 people and infected over 600,000 since the outbreak in April. There are currently 2 million internally displaced persons. That's homeless people running around looking for a box to hide under. And they're barely surviving over there in Yemen. And line number 4 in that sentence, you may have forgotten what the sentence was. Line number 4 was the sentence about the Iranian oil money, that it undermines peace throughout the entire Middle East. The Iranian oil money undermines peace throughout the entire Middle East. Liar! The whole world knows that Al-Qaeda was created by the Mossad and the CIA and MI6. After 9/11, America started attacking Afghanistan. That's what undermines the peace throughout the entire Middle East. We started attacking Afghanistan and Iraq. We got NATO to join in and started attacking Libya, Syria, Sudan, Pakistan, Somalia, and anywhere else that killing the indigenous population was necessary to get our corporations a foothold in those countries. Or perhaps the country was just, missing a Rothschild central bank. Yeah, that's all. They didn't have a central bank, so we have to come in with our bombers to clear the land there so that they can build a nice bank on it. And if some civilians get in the way. It's all part of doing banking business, So yeah, Trump continued his lies with saying things like this. We cannot let a murderous regime continue these destabilizing activities while building dangerous missiles, and we cannot abide by an agreement if it provides cover for the eventual construction of a nuclear program. What an idiot! He's saying that the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which prevents them, which is their agreement, and they have inspectors in there, said by doing that, it provides a cover for the eventual construction of a nuclear program. It's doublespeak. It's been working fine so far. Iran gets regular inspections, receive clean bills of health each and every time. For you, Donnie, you're just a Netanyahu's puppet. Maybe for you is what you think, but I don't even think he thinks that. He just wants us to think he thinks that. He's trying to hypnotize us. He thinks he's got charisma and he can go up there in front of the UN and just tell anything he wants to tell. He wants them to keep the sanctions going, increase them, to weaken Iran, so that it stands strong. It can't stand strong against, the imperial expansion of Israel and her puppets. The United States and Britannia and a few other members of NATO, they got designs on that area. Iran's a huge country. They'd want desperately to balkanize that one. The exploitation is already going on, and Trump wants it to continue. A few people were walking out, right? I was watching, it's like, people were getting up and walking away from those lies. And he got like a smattering of applause, by the Israeli kiss-ups in the crowd. And Netanyahu was sitting there nodding in approval whenever Trump used one of his Zionist lies, talking points, whenever Trump used the Netanyahu speech points. So he went on to call the JCPOA treaty with Iran that was developed with the help of the international community over a period of more than 12 years of negotiations. He called it one of the worst transactions the U.S. has ever entered into. Frankly, it's an embarrassment. You're the embarrassment. He also said Iran needs to respect the sovereign rights of its neighbors. They do. They're doing just fine, respecting the sovereign rights of their neighbors, as opposed to, us, Israel, and their allies. Everyone else in the UN should be well aware that Iran has not attacked anyone in 150 years. In over 150 years. Nikki Haley talking that crap to the UN is bad enough, but when she spews that drivel, reading straight out of Netanyahu's speech book, everyone figures, well, she's just another batshit crazy lying Zionist. But now you come out there, the head of the free world, allegedly, the captain of our ship, and you're repeating the same lies. And he went on to badmouth Iran more. He must think that everyone's forgotten that our CIA made that country what it is today. He was saying things like, that's got a bad government and what have you. Yeah, well, we're in a police state too. We've got black sites all over the place where we're torturing people. So you can't really act like somehow you're taking the moral high ground here. It's called blowback. We did that to Iran. That used to be a secular country. Back in 1950s, they were heading into democracy. They had a guy, Mohammad Mossadegh, and he was switching the country over to democratic values and making it a democracy. And we sent in the CIA to take them out. That's what we do all over the world. We take out a populist leader and we put in a puppet dictator. If there's a democracy already in place, we take it down and put in in this case, their puppet was the Shah. The Shah, he was the CIA's man there in Iran. So he'd lost his power to the parliament, and they got their new prime minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. He's widely considered to have been the closest thing Iran has ever had to a democratic leader. As a matter of fact, he openly championed democratic values and hoped to establish a democracy in Iran. When the elected parliament selected him as prime minister, he used his position to reduce the power of the Shah, and thus bringing Iran closer in line with the political traditions that had developed in Europe. In 1951, he was nationalized the Iranian oil production. He got the British out of there and pretty much made it in his own country, his own oil production, and turned it, so the government was in charge of it instead of having these oil corporations and they're calling the shots. And he was successful, and the British and the Americans were pissed. Does that sound familiar? Huh? Does that sound like that something's happened that way in a few other countries in the world? And then in 1953, the CIA Operation Ajax commenced. And I've just read some interesting new information on that. It came out like 3 months ago. This coup, in actuality, they had like 1,000 pages of documents that came out 3 months ago that hadn't been released. They were showing that the CIA had actually called off that coup. Their coup attempt was swiftly thwarted. Mossadegh made dozens of arrests. General Fazlollah Zahedi, a top conspirator, went into hiding, and the Shah fled the country. But at the last minute, another conspirator requested funds from the CIA. And with the aid of rented crowds, where have we heard that before? Rented crowds. Black Lives Matter, Antifas. Does that ring a bell to anybody? Yeah. So they got these rented crowds, and they believe that's how they managed to have their coup succeed. You know, with their CIA assistant there. Yep. So Iran's nationalist hero was jailed, the monarch restored under a Western-friendly Shah and Anglo-Iranian oil, renamed British Petroleum. They tried to get their fields back, but they didn't really. Despite this coup, the national pushback against their return to foreign control of oil was too much. They're leaving BP and other major oil companies to share Iran's oil wealth with Tehran. So it's like it was all for nothing. As far as, you know, the people that mattered, when the only people that mattered to Britannia and the CIA were the oil corporations. So all they succeeded in doing was trashing the democracy. They didn't get their business to improve by any stretch of the imagination. You know, kind of like we've done in one country after another, before and since. So yeah, Iran's come a long way since then, and they don't deserve the criticism from a dimwit that's friends with the House of Saud, quite possibly the most oppressive nation on the planet, with public beheadings daily, whippings, and women stoned to death as entertainment for any made-up reason by some chauvinist man-child. And this is who he thinks are good guys, right? The Saudis, the House of Saud. They have a horrible human rights record. They have ties to 9/11. Not that they're probably real. I mean, you know, they were set up to be the patsy for 9/11. And every mercenary and so-called terrorist organization on the CIA list, those guys back them. They're the money. They're the purse. You know, they're the money men in the Middle East. So okay, let's get back to Trump's lies in the UN, shall we? He went on to brag about the meeting with the Arab leaders in Arabia. Ooh, I met with Arab leaders in Arabia. He talked about aligning with them to defeat the very terrorist group that they support and supply. I mean, those guys all had puzzled looks on their faces as I get. They know that they supply terrorists, you know, al-Nusra, you know, the ISIS, and all those cute names that they have for all the militant, you know, mercenary armies over there. The Saudis know they fund them, and he's talking about how he aligned with them to defeat terrorism. And they're sitting there with a curious look on their face, like, who are we defeating again? You know, it's like the ones that Israel and NATO and Syria, yeah, that are in Syria destroying. Yeah, come on now, they know that. He took credit for what the governments in Iraq and Syria have achieved against the Western-backed mercenary armies. He said, "Oh, we're doing such a good job over there." No, you guys are basically in the way. The American military is in the way. The American military is bombing civilians, bombing cities and killing civilians by the dozen, almost daily. He had the nerve to call Bashar al-Assad's government a criminal regime, and he repeated the lies about him gassing his own people. Sheesh. Those have been proven false. Each one of those gas attacks, there's like 3 of them, each one of them was investigated thoroughly by independent people, and they found out that they either didn't happen or that they were done by the terrorists themselves. Mule cookies. And that was just the first half of his speech. The second half of his speech was political grandstanding and pandering, and I kind of zoned out. I wasn't going to listen to that crap from him. He'd already destroyed his credibility. He should have started with that stuff and left the other out. There was a Swedish foreign minister, Margot Wallström. She told the BBC it was the wrong speech at the wrong time to the wrong audience. And I agree. And several of the delegates at the UN meeting also agreed with her. He walked the crowd, half of it anyway, maybe not even half. What are you gonna do? You got to have your suck-ups in there hanging on his every word, because you know, the United States sure does pat a lot of pockets, glad hands a lot of people. So why all this talk about going to war again with North Korea? Well, it's going to be about the Benjamins, isn't it? Not just taking over the country so that you could rape and pillage. No. It's a little bit more than that. I was reading An article, this lady, she's a former Defense Department and Air Force analyst, Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. She said yesterday, the public hysteria being promoted by this administration indicates to me that this is an attempt to entertain the U.S. population through fear and shut down or limit public dissent. That we are speaking today of North Korea and its destruction by the U.S. military reveals the driving and desperate concern of the Pentagon and its economic dependencies. When the U.S. goes to war as it did in Korea in 1950, Yugoslavia in 1991, Iraq in 1990, and again in 2003, it was under the auspice or strong appearance of UN support. Haley's efforts at the UN have been designed to garner such support this summer, and it appears she has been less than fully successful, in part because taking a U.S. fight to North Korea is very similar to declaring war against China and Russia. The governments of both China and Russia not only hold UN Security Council veto power, both have asserted themselves globally, financially, and militarily in the past decade. The domestic propaganda battle by the U.S. government and domestic war advocates has been largely ineffective and does not yet seem to be catching fire. What needs to be done is to actually end the Korean War by committing to the peace treaty between the North and South that the 1953 armistice was supposed to foster. Of course, if a peace treaty were signed between North and South Korea, the U.S. military bases in South Korea would no longer be required. Any treaty would likely require these U.S. bases, Army, Navy, Air Force, and intelligence operations, to be closed or shifted to South Korean military control. Any hot war with North Korea results in literally 1 billion people dead. There are no fundamental U.S. interests in North Korea that cannot be peacefully acquired or accomplished with the help of China and Russia. Clearly, the U.S. government is seeking to intensify the crisis, not diffuse it, because the Pentagon faces very real and very severe budget and influence reduction in coming years as the U.S. debt grows rapidly and the U.S. economy slows. Now, that's what she said. That's what former Defense Department and Air Force analyst Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski said about that. And that's all I got to say about that. I agree with her. That's exactly what it's always been about. They got to have a war. They're failing. The ones in Iraq and Afghanistan and the big ones there in Syria and all that, they're winding down. We're getting the boot. So they figure maybe North Korea would be an easy target. They probably only had one hydrogen bomb and they blew it up. So what about the UN, huh? Well, today they had a meeting about banning nuclear weapons completely. What? Banning them completely? You must be out your mind. Well, that would solve the whole problem with North Korea entirely, wouldn't it, huh? Get rid of all nuclear weapons. There's always been a the Non-Nuclear Proliferation Treaty, the NNPT. It's been in place for 50 years. And this was the most recent attempt to ban all nukes. And they've been trying that, for the last 10 years. They got this whole new attempt. I guess they got new wording on the idea. It was dubbed the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, the ICAN. I can. Yes, I hope you can. This meeting, of course, was mostly just ceremonial, and in July, 122 nations signed on to it. And today, Brazilian President Michel Temer was the first head of state to put his signature on the document, which is interesting, because Brazil was one of the first countries that got conned into becoming a nuclear power. I don't know if y'all know this or not, but at first, there was a desire to have a balance of nuclear war power among the American allies. So they were trying to get all these other countries around the world to become nuclear powers along with them. And Brazil was one of the chosen few that was given the technology. They began the production, but eventually they stopped. And I think it's probably more for economic reasons than moral ones, because it ain't cheap to manufacture and maintain a nuclear arsenal, I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that right now. Of course, none of the world powers that possess nuclear weapons attended this meeting today. Oh, no. The United States, Britain, Russia, France, China, India, Pakistan, they all refrained, if you will, from sending representatives. The United States, Britain, and France have dismissed the UN treaty as unrealistic, arguing that North Korea's intensified nuclear activity has shown that they still need nuclear arms to maintain deterrence. Talking out of both sides of your ass, are you? Really? You think that the North Korea won't happily sign on to that if you guys do? They got no reason to have nuclear weapons. They need them because you guys got them. It's like waving a big old stick around because you guys got sticks too. I gotta have a stick. Yeah, like they would happily be disarmed if North Korea did. Yeah, like they would really. I mean, if North Korea was to drop all their nuclear weapons, you guys gonna disarm? No, they won't. For that matter, how about getting rid of nuclear power plants while we're on the subject? Huh? Nuclear waste is everywhere. I was reading up on this stuff lately. I guess I've been like living in the happy life. Just wondering. I check these radiation reports that are put out about where radiation is around the country, and it's just amazingly high in countries and in cities all around the country. And it's like, why? I keep thinking why, and I'm thinking, well, is it from depleted uranium that we're shooting off all over the Middle East? It comes across in the trade winds. So yeah, after we started doing that, lung cancer increased, fivefold in this country. And then you got, our own nuclear reactors, and allegedly those all leak at least a little bit. And then you got Fukushima that happened a few years ago, like 5 years ago, coming across the west coast, hitting the west coast from the Pacific. It's it's in the sea water, and it's full strength, slapping the crap out of the west coast of this entire, America's, North and South America. It's running along our own entire coastline. It's almost like it's such old news, people don't even care anymore. But I was reading this stuff, and it's like, this blew me away. Halliburton, of course, and Dow Chemicals, the people that gave us the Bhopal disaster. Well, they've been mixing nuclear waste into chemical slurry, and they use it in fracking, and they've been doing it since the 60s. So I guess that people talked about it then, and it kind of got swept under the carpet. They don't talk about it anymore. They came up with this idea of mixing nuclear waste with cement and injecting it into the ground, claiming it'll stay there. Well, of course it'll stay there. Not. It hasn't. Fracking has been linked to the contamination of the public water supply and critical aquifers, as well as ties to earthquake upticks near the drilling locations that are otherwise not prone to seismic activity. This fracking that they're doing, they have double use. They're injecting our nuclear waste. It's not just nuclear waste. Oh, no. Lots of other things they inject into the ground, saying, oh, it'll be down there, and then we can forget about it. No. It's coming up to bite us on the ass. Back in 2005, the so-called Cheney loophole in the law. Dick Cheney's his loophole. He had the industry. It allowed them to circumvent the Safe Drinking Water Act by exempting fracking fluids. Attaboy, Cheney. Oh, but it's worse than just that. No. The nuclear industry has also used fluoridation of the public water supply as a means of secretly dumping industrial waste after fluoride was a major byproduct in the uranium enrichment process for building the atomic bomb. Yeah, they said, hey, here's what we do. We'll tell people it's good for their teeth. And we can pour it in the water. They're all over there. They all grow their little horns and they start. Yeah! An Associated Press investigation found back in 6 years ago that 48 of 65 nuclear sites in the United States were leaking tritium, a radioactive form of hydrogen, into the groundwater supplies via corroded pipes and tunnels. Associated Press found at least 37 locations were in direct violation of federal drinking water standards for tritium, in some cases hundreds of times over. Some 30 trillion gallons of toxic waste has been kept out of sight, out of mind, by the U.S. industries that have injected. They injected hundreds and thousands of feet underground into wells since the 1960s. Well, that sounds okay, doesn't it? Unless it leaks, and it does. Leakage is exactly what has happened time and again throughout the years, including at disposal sites for Oak Ridge National Laboratories. That's one of the oldest and largest U.S. nuclear weapons facilities. Back in '84 in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, radioactive waste was turned up by water monitoring near a deep injection well at a government nuclear facility. The infallible, permanent, and impermeable deep injection wells that Halliburton and the Atomic Energy Commission considered as a solution to nuclear waste for aeons to come were found leaking, and they're turning up radioactive nuclear waste at the very Oak Ridge site where these 1960s disposal projects were taking place. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, the pollution iceberg. In '67, pesticide waste was injected by a chemical plant at Denver's Rocky Mountain Arsenal, destabilizing a seismic fault, causing a magnitude 5 earthquake, strong enough to shatter windows and close schools. A year later, a corroded hazardous waste well for pulping liquor in beautiful Erie, Pennsylvania ruptured. 5 miles away, according to an EPA report, a noxious black liquid seeped from an abandoned gas well in Presque Isle State Park. In Beaumont, 75, dioxin and highly acidic herbicide, or is it herbicide, injected underground by the Vesical Chemical Corporation, burned a hole through its well casing. And as much as 5 million gallons of the waste was into a nearby drinking water aquifer. And I've got plenty more on this, but it's too depressing, and I'm out of time. Thank you for listening. This is American Freedom Radio, and I am Conspiracy Comedy News, Marz Theron. And I thank you for listening to me, and I'll see you next week.